that we had last month. And Scott is the director of research, software, and solutions in the research technologies division. He got his PhD in astrophysics from IU Bloomington in 2012 and has served in a variety of research technology roles. So with that, Tom, it's all yours. Thank you. I will monitor the chat. If there's any quick clarification questions, I'm hoping you're okay if we just intersperse them, and otherwise we'll have a longer Q&A section towards the end.
Perfect. Works for me. I'm used to being interrupted. I teach undergrads.
All right.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Tom. I manage the IT training team here at IU and do several other things. The slides that I'm presenting on today, the slideshow is always available at the link that's on this first slide. It'll also be on the last slide. If you don't write it down right now, that's okay. It'll be on the last slide too. There's more content in this slide deck than what I'm presenting today. A lot of it's about prompting techniques, a lot of practice exercises and things like that from various groups around the university. So it's various domains of knowledge and how they might be using generative AI in those particular fields and areas. So by all means, feel free to explore this. This is a presentation that I update anytime I do a presentation. So it's always up to date with the most recent information that I have at IU. I understand from context that Scott Michael did some instruction last time about prompting techniques. I'm not sure why the slides are advancing on their own. So today I'm basically going to be just going through introducing you to the tools we have available to us here at IU. So let's get started. First of all, talking about AI at IU. Oh my gosh, I just discovered why they're advancing. It's because I'm clicking errantly on the slide itself. These are the tools we have here at IU. There are quite a few, but they really come down to 4 vendor tools, one of which we're not going to be discussing today, and that's Adobe Firefly. The other vendor tools that we're going to be talking about are Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, OpenAI ChatGPT. I'm also going to mention the Realms service and some of the tools that we have available to us here at IU. All of these tools have knowledge base articles. They're all linked on this slide. Some of these links take you directly to the service itself. So if it's a service name, chances are it takes you to the service. If it's an IU tool, it's going to take you to a knowledge base article that explains a little bit more about that tool. Some things have changed. I just realized did not update this slide because I forgot that this piece changed. Our data classifications in all of these tools are up to restricted data unless otherwise noted, and we're going to get to that otherwise noted. One specific thing that I want to mention right off the top, Adobe Firefly we can only use with public data, which makes sense because Adobe Firefly is for generating media, and we're probably generating media for public use here at IU, or at least that's what Firefly is intended for here at IU. You could also use Gemini using Nano Banana to generate images. You could also use the ChatGPT image generator in a more limited capacity to generate images as well. But all of the tools that we're going to be discussing today, unless I say otherwise, you can assume they're available for up to restricted data. The only caveat, the only catch there is Adobe Firefly, which is only available for public data at IU. With all of these third-party tools, when you hit their website, you're going to want to log in with your entire IU email address. That's going to tell the service that you are an IU person, and it's going to send you to IU login to let you log in. The other thing I'm going to mention here, because it's important to understand, is that there are no approved AI detection tools in use for instruction here at IU. If you want to use an AI detection tool for your own work, that's great, but the university has made it clear that these tools don't do anything but identify bad writing, and they don't really detect AI written content. You can take something that's fully written by AI, drop it in one of these tools, and it'll tell you that it's 10% written by AI or completely original. You can take something that's completely original, drop it in one of the tools, and it may tell you that it's completely AI generated. They're just not reliable. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to change in the future or not, but right now there are no tools for detection here at IU. And even the tools that we have where they have a detection component built in, that detection component is disabled because it's all false flags. It's all false negatives. So let's
Tom,
talk. Go ahead.
one small thing on the login.
Sure.
So we asked Scott last time, like how can you prevent your input to service model improvement data for the LLMs? And he said the same thing as you. He said, you log in and then the data stays here on IU premises. So I very religiously paid attention to that the last 2 weeks. I used Gemini. And despite logging in, even this morning, Gemini was actually insisting to use my Gmail account, which is my private account. So then I opened an anonymous window in Chrome, and then you don't have any context from the machine. Then I logged in, and then I got the IU logo in the top right corner, which then told me that I was on the IU premises. But it's something that maybe everybody should be aware of. You actually need to double check, even if you logged in with your IU account, that you are on IU's version of Gemini.
Yeah, so if you're using Gemini, this is Gemini. Just happen to be able to pull this up real quick. This is what you will see if you're logged in at IU. You will see if you have a profile picture associated with your IU account, you will see your profile picture, and then you will also see the IU logo. The other thing that will show you that you're logged in is this little shield in the prompt box. You're going to see a similar shield in Copilot, which I also have open that I can share. Oh my gosh. Sorry, this is my first time presenting on my Mac, so I need to find some things here in Teams. I've gotten used to using the Windows shortcuts to share windows in Teams. So this is what Copilot looks like when you're logged in. Again, you also see this shield that mentions that you're logged in and your data is protected by enterprise data protection. That really means that Microsoft, Google, ChatGPT, Adobe, none of those companies can look at our data unless we explicitly invite them into our tenant. They can't use it for their purposes. They can only hold on to it and give it back to us for our purposes when we need it. That's what that enterprise data protection agreement is all about. Good thing to point out. Thank you. Let me get this back up and going. Okay. The other thing I want to mention before we move off the slide, all of the IU tools are built with data security in mind from the ground up. So that's Chat AIU, the Realm services, anything that's hosted by and managed by IU is built with IU's data protection priorities in mind from the ground up, which allows us to do some interesting things with the Realm service that we'll talk about a little bit later. So just a quick overview of data classifications. I don't know that that's going to be an issue for this particular audience. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. IU has 4. The least restrictive is public. That's basically any information you can find on a website or any information that is okay to share with the general public. From there, it gets a little bit more restrictive every step you take up, with critical data being the most restricted kind of data that we have here at IU. If you're not familiar with what falls into each of those categories, I don't have the time to get into that today, but the data management website, which is at datamanagement.iu.edu, has a very thorough explanation of what these classifications mean, and even has examples in a matrix about what classifications fit into which category. Highly recommend checking that out. The reason that's important to understand is because everything that we do with generative AI is going to be governed by those data classifications, and it's going to tell you what you can do and where. We have 3 tools that are available to us to use with critical data. That's the Realm service and the Microsoft 365 Copilot variants that we have access to here at IU, specifically Chat and App. Everybody at IU has access to Chat by default. Chat is what you get just by having an A5 license to Microsoft 365. You go to the Copilot website, you can use Copilot through that interface. That's our general purpose AI tool that's available to everybody that we could use critical data in. The Microsoft 365 Copilot app is an add-on to your A5 license that you pay per fiscal year, and it opens up the capability to use Microsoft 365 Copilot inside of the desktop applications, inside of Teams. It allows you to reference files in your SharePoint storage locations as if you were creating a mini RAG tool. But it is a paid add-on. Departmental accounts are how you pay for this. There is a knowledge base article linked at the bottom of this slide that will take you to the page that describes the process. The other tools we have, like I mentioned, Google Gemini, NotebookLM, and OpenAI's ChatGPT are available for use up to restricted data. The caveat with ChatGPT is you must join IU's workspace. Just logging in with your IU account doesn't do it for you. If you didn't already have a ChatGPT account with an IU email address when we started our contract with OpenAI, you've been provisioned now with that account. If you do have an account, you will have to go through a process to decide whether or not you're going to purge your old account and start fresh, or download your content and then in a format that could be re-imported into ChatGPT. Whatever you do with ChatGPT, just don't delete your account on your own, because you will then have to wait 30 days if you want to use IU's service. So that's how the data classifications shake out in our tools. Any questions about those before we move on?
Yeah, Tom, can you just clarify again? So if we go into ChatGPT and we go there and we list our IU address, and that takes us somewhere where we'll enter our standard IU password and get in that way. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then you said, but like you can do that, but there's yet another step to be sure that you're.
No, I understand the confusion. ChatGPT is a little confusing. Here's the way this works. When we rolled out the service, it was opt-in. We didn't provision everybody because we didn't have the seats to just give everybody an account with ChatGPT. So the way it worked is you said, yes, I want to use this. You were then invited to our workspace, which allowed you to create your account and set it up. If you already had a ChatGPT account with your iu.edu email address before we even started this whole process, that account still exists, but it's not a part of our IU workspace. We don't have a way to claim that account and put it in our workspace. The only way we can do that is if you go through a sign-up procedure, it's all in the knowledge base. You could just look for ChatGPT. If this is relevant to you, there's a process that you go through that will tell ChatGPT what you want to do with that account. Okay, what that already existing account. If you've never had an account with OpenAI, you don't have to worry about this. It's only for folks who wanted to use ChatGPT, use their IU email address to sign up prior to when we had our agreement with OpenAI.
Got it.
Does that help clarify?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
One question from Andrew: is Claude going to be part of the tool set?
I hope so someday.
Okay.
Right now, there aren't plans to bring on other tools. So Claude is not an approved tool at IU right now.
All right, and then there's a whole thread started by Khadija, back to the question of how do you know you're logged in? So Khadija, as Tom showed, if you see the IU logo in the top right corner, you are actually in the IU version of, for instance, Gemini, as he showed. It's up there. And then if you mouse over your picture or the icon that represents you, it should say your IU account. So that's how you know you are in there with your IU account. Arthur had a good suggestion to use Chrome profiles. So essentially a profile is like a different identity on Chrome. Like you log in with a different account. Your browsing history is tracked to that account. That's actually a good idea because a lot of us, we just use our Google profiles, which is why it defaults to our Google accounts. And then we have to actively log into the IU account. But if you make an IU account profile on Google, then you don't have to do that.
Yeah, that's one way. The way I do it is I just use two different browsers. Edge is a Chrome browser. I use that for work, Microsoft Edge. Chrome is a Chrome browser. I use that for personal stuff. So I've got my work IU Google logged in through Microsoft Edge. I've got my personal Gmail, Google logged in through Chrome. Yep, different computers work as well. It's the key is your account, and people automatically just assume Google uses their Google account. You can have many Google accounts. One of them is provided by IU. That's the one you want to use for work stuff within Google. The other one is one that you signed up with on your own that is not part of any workspace. That's not one you should be using for IU work. For clarification with Gemini, they can be used with restricted data and below. That is correct. The question, does Gemini or ChatGPT at IU have an API right now? They do have an API. It is not available unless you, with Google, this is where it gets complicated. With Google, you need to have a cloud computing account with Google through IU to use the Gemini API. For ChatGPT, there's currently not a process for that. Sophia, I do not have an answer for your question. That's going to have to come from somebody with more specific domain knowledge. Okay, I think I'm caught up with the questions I can answer in the chat. All right, so this question always comes up. Can I use other tools? Maybe. I mean, I use Claude for some things related to work. I have my own personal Claude account. Can I do that? Yes, because I only use public data in Claude. The reasoning behind this, we can assume that all of these tools have absorbed all of the public data that any university provides. Anything that's classified as public is already in these models. It doesn't matter what tool you use with public data. That's only true about public data. Anything that's university internal, restricted, or critical, you must use one of IU's tools if you want to be in compliance with IU data management policies. That includes Apple Intelligence. That includes the Galaxy AI. That includes anything that's on your device. Public data is okay in those tools. Anything that's university internal, restricted, or critical, it absolutely has to be an IU tool. This slide's here because I get asked this all the time. I love Claude. Claude writes really well. It's really good at coding. Can't use it for coding work at IU, but I can use it for my own personal work at IU, or my own public data work at IU. So again, public data, fine in any tool, anything above public, not. So that's the intro piece. We've talked about data classifications, what's available in which tool. We're going to hit that again because it's not super straightforward. It's also not super complicated. Are there any questions about that introductory content, like that brief overview of the tools? Because we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about them.
One quick question just about, so if you're using stuff within IU, is it still your private information, or does the university have access to all the questions you're asking?
That's a really good question. I defer people to the acceptable use agreement that nobody reads, but that lays out when IU can access data that you're using in IU tools. The bottom line is, if there's a FOIA request, if there's any sort of compliance audit, if there's any sort of IU policy that's being investigated in some way, there's a pretty good chance that IU is going to look at your content. That includes the content you've got in SharePoint, OneDrive, Google, anything associated with your IU account. IU can do that, just like any employer can do that. The difference is that IU generally doesn't do that because there's one, it's a people power thing. We don't have the number of people that are required to monitor almost 100,000 people who are using these tools daily. Two, if somebody comes with a complaint, IU is probably just going to say, yep, here's the data. Good luck with your investigation. We'll help you in any way we can.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's talk about the individual tools. We're going to be talking about really three different kinds of tools today. We usually just talk about two. Today I'm going to be talking about the particular chatbots that we have access to, and then I'm going to be talking about the RAG tools we have access to, and then finally we're going to talk about developer tools that we have access to here at IU. So we're going to start with the chatbots. So here are our chatbots. A chatbot is basically just a tool that you chat with. That's really what it comes down to. These are the chatbots that we have access to at IU. That's Copilot, ChatGPT, and Gemini. Chatbots are what people just call AI these days. They think AI is a brand new thing. And in fact, AI has been around for decades. Just this kind of generative AI is the new thing. These chatbots can respond with near human-like fidelity. They can pass Turing tests. They can reason. They can help you brainstorm. They can help you with basic research. But these are kind of general purpose tools. They're kind of like if you would imagine a blank robot. You're basically going to impose on that robot the role that you need it to take, the kinds of tasks you want it to perform, and then you're going to give it instructions. That's what these chatbots are. They're just blank slates that you can morph and bend into whatever purpose you need them to serve for that particular the particular task that you're trying to accomplish. So let's kind of break these down a little bit. Copilot is the longest standing AI tool that we've had here at IU. There are two versions of this, like I mentioned previously. You can log into Copilot by visiting copilot.cloud.microsoft. Just log in like you do with any Microsoft application that's using your full IU email address. You'll be asked to authenticate with your IU passphrase, and then Duo, and then you'll be in. There are two versions of Copilot. One is the version that everybody gets just by being at IU. That's Copilot Chat. Copilot Chat is available to everybody at no additional cost. It's a chatbot on the web, just like ChatGPT, just like Gemini. The paid version of Microsoft 365 Copilot, again, this is paid and billed on the fiscal year, so July 1 through June 30. It is the Microsoft Copilot app. This is the version that adds Copilot functionality into the Microsoft desktop applications, into the web applications, into Teams, and it allows you to sort of create mini RAG type experiences. So you can basically have Copilot reference your content in SharePoint. You can even turn web search off and have it be a true RAG tool where you're just specifying the items that you want it to use as a reference so that it's only limited to responding from the knowledge that you give it. It can also do the same things that the chat version can do. So it is a fully capable chatbot. It's just it is integrated into applications, and it does have that capability of being able to reference content in SharePoint. If you've got the upgraded app license, whatever you can see and do in Microsoft 365, Copilot can see and do as well. So it can see your calendar, it can see the org chart, it can see your email, your messages, your conversation threads, the files you've got permission to see, everything. It cannot see things that you do not have access to, okay? So if somebody has a file in their storage, you can't see it unless they give you access to it. So that's one of the things that's nice about Copilot, that sort of file permission security that is determined through SharePoint is carried through everything that happens in Copilot.
Tom, can you briefly explain what RAG is? Because I'm sure not everybody is familiar with the term.
Yeah, sorry. I assume from the description of the last session that the RAG tools were discussed. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. We're going to talk about the RAG tools next. So if that sort of concept is a little bit fuzzy for you, we'll clarify it. The short definition of RAG is essentially you give a tool knowledge, so you give it resources, you give it videos, you give it files, you give it whatever it needs to do its work, and it responds from that knowledge, not from the knowledge stored in the model and not from the knowledge on the internet. So it's a way to ground responses in things that you know are true, and it can be referenced and it could be there are some really powerful ways that you could use some of the RAG tools that we have available to us now. that we're going to talk about when we get into that portion of the presentation. So it's basically a way to say, here's the knowledge I want you to respond from. Now answer this question. So Copilot, these are the sort of, we've already kind of talked about this. It's mostly because I don't normally have a lot of these slides turned on when I give this presentation. Copilot Chat's that general purpose chatbot. Copilot app allows also the SharePoint context to be brought in as well. That's the main difference between these two. The way I keep it straight in my head is if I want the Copilot features in my applications, I need the Copilot app subscription. Otherwise, Copilot Chat is the general chatbot that we're going to have on the web. There are some built-in tools in Copilot. There are a ton of coaching agents, a lot of pieces that have been built into Copilot that anybody can use. There are two agents that are relevant to app license holders only, and that's the researcher agent and the analyst agent. Researcher allows you to take advantage of OpenAI's deep research models, and allows you to actually do longer, deeper dives into content. And analyst is kind of a virtual data scientist. That is again built on top of an OpenAI model. It's designed to help you with large data sets. It can use chain of thought reasoning, and it'll even write its own Python scripts to analyze your data in order to answer the questions that you're asking of the tool. All right, questions about Copilot?
Yeah, Faye had one in the chat about HIPAA data, which I think is restricted, and whether you
Yes.
can use Copilot to work on those data.
Correct. HIPAA, I believe HIPAA data is not allowed in any tool other than Realms. I saw Scott show up. He might be able to clarify that for me.
Yeah, so technically speaking, HIPAA data falls under the restricted category, but it is a sort of elevated sensitivity of restricted. So it really is more critical data, especially if it's fully identified data. And so when Tom says that these tools are approved for restricted data, that does not typically include ePHI or HIPAA related data. The only one of the tools that you can use with approval for with critical or HIPAA related data is this Copilot app with appropriately tagged data. So you can go through your Teams or SharePoint folders and classify all of the data as critical, which will change how the Copilot agents interact with those data. So you have to get approval to do that, and then appropriately tag all of your data to be able to do it safely.
Yep. Any other questions about Copilot? Thanks, Scott. All right, let's talk about chatbot number 2, and this is Gemini. This is Google Gemini. It's Google's AI tool. It's developed by Google DeepMind, if you've ever heard of that lab. I think they're still based in London. It's one of the few Google departments that's not based in the US. Gemini is basically a chatbot, just like Microsoft Copilot Chat, like ChatGPT. The models are different, so you're going to get different responses. As to which one responds better, yes, they all respond better than the others at something. So there's not really a better tool or a worse tool out of this bunch. It's all dependent on the work you're using, the kinds of outputs you're trying to get, and the ways the tool is going to respond for you. It's got 3 different models that we have access to here at IU. The fast model, the thinking model, and the pro model. These are all Gemini 3 family of models. The Pro is now 3.1. The Fast and Thinking are still 3.0. All that means is when you go to Gemini, you actually have the ability to decide if you want just a quick answer, if you want the model to ruminate on the answer a little bit more, or if you want the model to use some of the tools built into the Pro model to answer your question. Why might some of those be important? Well, if you've got a particularly tricky problem, the thinking model is going to help you get through it because it's going to do a little bit more reasoning before it responds. If you're working on something that's really complex, like coding applications, dealing with very large data sets, if you want a super photorealistic image, you're going to want to use that Pro model because it's just going to throw more compute power and more particular. I don't really know what's happening behind the scenes, but it's definitely getting more compute power and it's definitely running through more cycles before it responds for you. And it tends to handle those super complex tasks a lot better than thinking and fast. In Copilot, you can create agentic tools using agents. In Gemini, you create agentic tools using what they call gems. Both gems and agents can be shared with people. Gems and agents, or gems can be shared with folks outside of IU from within IU's instance. If you're doing that, you have to be very cautious about the kind of data that you're giving to the gem as knowledge. Anytime you're sharing a gem outside of IU, it can only be giving people public information unless they are a contractor or an affiliate in some way that they have the ability to access some other information. But you do have to be really careful about that with the sharing of Google Gemini gems. The other thing that's nice about Gemini is it has the largest context window of all of our tools. In an AI tool, the term context refers to its short-term memory. So Gemini can remember more things than Copilot before it starts forgetting stuff for long conversations. Some of the things that these models are good at, you can see that I kind of outline them here for you. There are limits to the thinking and Pro model for use every day. So you can't just go and do Pro queries for everything that you do here at IU. You will only be getting roughly 100 prompts per day. That is not a solid number. This is all based on tokens and the amount of information that you're getting from the tool and the amount of information you're giving to the tool. So the bigger prompts you use, the more info and the more data you give Gemini Pro, the fewer prompts you're actually going to get out of it. The same is true about thinking, but you can kind of use that as a meter to determine how much more access you have to thinking versus Pro. And then Flash has an unlimited daily usage amount for folks here at IU. Again, Pro gives you a lot more reasoning and logic. Thinking allows you to solve more complex problems than fast. So that's kind of how the tiered system works. When I also use Gemini in my own personal work, I find myself switching between these models in a single chat. So I'll start a chat with fast, and then I'll start seeing, it's not quite answering what I want. So then I'll bump it up to another model and keep the conversation going. That's another feature of Gemini that's really nice. When you change your model, you don't have to change your conversation. You're just changing it from that point of the conversation until you change it again. Also, in my opinion, Gemini has some of the best image generation right now. But there's we can argue about that all day. Like some people like ChatGPT's image generation. Some people prefer Firefly's. For me, it's Gemini. This is kind of what I'm saying about the tool speaks to the use. A gem is not RAG, it's an agent. So an agentic tool has its own instructions built in. It has a task it's going to accomplish. A lot of the ways people use gems here at IU is to get formatted output or have it refer to particular pieces of knowledge when it's responding, but it is not truly agentic. We'll talk about Google's, it's not truly RAG. We're going to talk about Google's RAG tool in a little bit. Can we access Google Studio through IU? That's a good question. I do not know the answer to. I'm assuming you mean Google's AI Studio. I would imagine that you would need access to the Google Cloud Platform for that, which is a paid service at IU.
Yeah, we do not have access.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Any other questions about Gemini? I keep clicking over. I keep thinking I have a third Gemini slide. I don't. The question is, can you build your own data analysis agent using a gem? Do I have training on GEMS? We are about to have 2 events that we're offering that are going to showcase GEMS. One is, I think it's called Hidden Gems for Faculty. And the other one is using the same title, but it's for staff. So there's a Hidden Gems for Faculty event tomorrow. You can find information and register for it here. It's ittraining.iu, ittraining.iu.edu. You can find information about Hidden Gems and register there. It'll be under upcoming events. You'll be able to find it there. When we get the staff event fully fleshed out and published, you'll be able to register for that there as well. You can build your own analysis agents using GEMS. GEMS follow whatever instructions you give them. So if you want to write instructions that turn a GEM into a data analysis agent, you can do that. They're customized little chatbot things. They're really powerful. All right, ChatGPT at IU. This is the newest, go ahead.
If I could just jump in here, because I think
Absolutely.
Roger was asking sort of about, Google Studio versus GEMS, and the only sort of caveat that I would give, I mean, Tom's exactly right that you can create a gem to do, any number of different things on your behalf as an agent. A sort of a platform like Google Studio that's designed to be a coding partner, will produce a code artifact that, depending on how important it is for you to have reproducibility in your research, may be much more useful for you to have, a data analysis pipeline that's replicable. The gem is running against an LLM in the background, and so will not necessarily be as repeatable as code that you've generated.
Yep, that's important information, Scott. Thank you. Yeah, any of these agentic tools, they're all running on an LLM in the background. One of the things that's super powerful about Copilot is you can have an agent orchestrate other agents. So you can kind of go into agent inception with Copilot. That is, as far as I know, there aren't people doing that right now at IU. There may be, and I just haven't heard of them. But by and large, people aren't doing that. So it's just another way to make a customized tool that responds in a way that you want it to respond. But like Scott said, it's not necessarily going to be predictable. It's not necessarily going to be the same thing every time. It may be the same format, but it may not respond in the same way. That's one of the caveats with these sort of agentic tools is they are still responding off the LLM. They don't have a bunch of instructions like hard-coded and baked into them to keep them from doing things that way. So here's ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the newcomer here at IU. It is just ChatGPT. You can access it by using your IU credentials. This is what we were talking about at the beginning. If you already had a ChatGPT account with your IU email address before we had ChatGPT EDU at IU, you will have to go through a process to convert your account to an IU account and join our workspace because it's not going to be part of our workspace by default. Being part of our workspace is what allows you to use up to restricted data in this tool. That is restricted data with no PHI for ChatGPT. This particular tool has some different capabilities than others. First of all, it's running on similar models to Copilot, but if you give the same prompt to each tool, you're going to see they respond in very different ways. That's because the LLM doesn't determine the response. All of the things built on top of that LLM are what determine the response. OpenAI has built ChatGPT in a certain way. Microsoft has built Copilot in a certain way. Even though they're using similar models, you'll see them respond in very different ways. It is a general purpose chatbot. It has a public web context. You can create agentic tools inside of ChatGPT. ChatGPT calls those the analog to a gem, a custom GPT. ChatGPT also gives us the ability to organize our content into projects. The thing that's different about a project versus a custom GPT is that a project is something that you can have multiple conversations with, have a set of files that you reference in those conversations. It can have its own set of instructions, and it's more of an organizational tool, whereas a custom GPT is a standalone contained tool. So you're not going to be changing the knowledge sources for a custom GPT as often as you can change files that you upload to a ChatGPT project. So they have different use cases. And if you're not super familiar with those tools right now, hearing me explain them, it sounds like, well, those sound like the same thing. And yeah, they really are very similar. It is in how you use the tool day to day. That's the biggest difference. The important thing to keep in mind here is that with our license with ChatGPT, we do not have access to the more advanced features like live voice, advanced reasoning models, deep research, and automated task features. If you want that kind of capability, Microsoft Copilot is the tool that has that for us here at IU. Google Gemini also has deep research available to us here at IU, just not through ChatGPT EDU. Questions about ChatGPT or any of the other chatbot tools we talked about so far?
I do have one question, Tom, and
Sure.
that is the following. You know, these agents are usually pretty useful, but they are so all over the place that they can get annoying. Like one example is, when you fire up Gmail, it offers to summarize every single email, even if it contains like one line. And I'm like, I don't need you for that, So I've been wondering if and when we will have a little bit more granular control about where these agents show up and what they help us with. I guess it's part of the evolution because we're still kind of in the early days of this. But any insights on that?
I don't have any. That's largely up to these vendors. And Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, they all have different ways that they want to handle that. So yeah, I don't really have an answer to that. I would love that granular control. I'm with you. I don't have an answer though. All right, so we've talked about chatbots. Let's talk about RAGs. PHI is restricted within chatbots. Okay, so the question about PHI, are you talking about IU-owned IP or faculty-owned IP?
So it would be IU-owned IP, but also, so some of our research has IP that belongs to like pharmaceutical companies, for example. So, but the protocols themselves integrate both intellectual property of IU and like a pharma company, for example. Would that be protected with the chatbots? Since that technically falls under the restricted, but I'm just trying to figure out like if my investigators want to start using that, like what are their options? Like, is it an option or not?
Yeah, I saw Scott unmute. I think he's gonna have a better answer than me, I think.
So I mean, typically these have some governing agreement, and the sort of standard boilerplate language from general counsel that IU tries to deploy doesn't necessarily consider, hasn't integrated AI into it. But a lot of times the partner that we're partnering with will include language to either exclude or allow in some form or fashion these tools. So I think it's really going to be case by case dependent, and get back to the sort of agreement between IU and the organization that you're partnering with.
Okay, thank you.
The question about the research agent, remember the research agent is only available if you have the Copilot app license. If you don't have the app license, there is a deep research capability that is available through Google Gemini. There's not a researcher agent. The Google Cloud Platform, you will have to associate a departmental account to get access to that at IU. There is information in the knowledge base that can help you get that access. Just search for Google Cloud or Google Cloud Computing, something along those lines, and you'll find the articles that point you in the right direction. All right, retrieval augmented generation. We have two tools that do this at IU. One is available to everybody. The other is available if you have the upgraded Copilot license. I bet you can't guess which is which. We'll go ahead and talk about them both. They're very similar tools. Notebook LM is Google's version of a do-it-yourself, build-your-own RAG tool. It runs off the Gemini 3 models in the back end. You basically add your resources to your notebook, and then you can have a conversation with that notebook. The nice thing about RAGs is they don't reach out to the web. They don't respond from the model. They use the model to understand the language you're giving them. They also use the model to write understandable language back to you, but they don't pull information out of that model. They only pull information from the sources that you've added to the notebook. They can have their own instructions. Notebook LM notebooks can generate infographics and podcast summaries of the content. They can generate study guides, flashcards, all kinds of different pieces. Copilot notebooks can tie together Office documents, and they can tie together conversations. Since most people don't have access to Copilot notebooks, we generally don't talk about them a lot. One of the main differences between them is that Copilot notebooks can integrate directly into OneNote, so you can work on your notebooks through OneNote if you would like. Notebook LM is by far the most common RAG tool here at IU. It's available through Google. It uses the same things through Gemini. Log in with your IU credentials. It's got the same restricted data limit that Google Gemini has. This is a summary of Google Notebook LM. It basically is an AI-powered research tool. I also teach this to my students as a way that they could use it to study for things in their classes. They could take their notes, add it to a notebook, have a conversation with it, have it build slideshows, have it quiz them, and it's only going to pull information from their notes. That does mean you have to be an accurate note taker, and your documents have to be accurate, but it'll just pull right from that. One of the most powerful parts of Google Notebook LM is this last bit. This is a new feature. You can use a notebook as a knowledge source for a gem. So you can build a gem that points to a notebook as its knowledge source, thereby creating a more RAG style agent than you would create otherwise using a gem. The idea is to organize your content in Notebook LM, then refer to that notebook as a knowledge source in a gem. You can also add other knowledge to that gem as well, but you can use the notebook as a gem knowledge source. Copilot notebooks are really similar. The main difference is that it's a Microsoft tool, not a Copilot tool. That's it. There are some more restrictions to, like Copilot, you can't have as many sources. You can't have it doesn't have as big of a context window, but they are available if you've got that upgraded license. But again, that's only if you've got the upgraded license. Just like researcher and analyst, they're only available with the upgraded license too. Any question about the two RAG tools that we have?
Yeah, I have one,
Sure.
Tom. So one of the challenges for faculty is to do good instructional design. And obviously, you know, we're content producers. We can make slideshows that make people fall asleep for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But the real question is, you know, how do you use instructional design to get your content across so it's memorable, it fits with the learner style, it fits with the learner, you know, stage. And so I'm thinking notebook LLMs could have a good role there. How creative is, let's say, Google Notebook LLM to help you with actually coming up with value-added exercises, for instance, for your lecture?
That's a good question. I can't really, I'm not a pedagogy expert. I teach one class in SPIA, but I could tell you how that could work with Notebook LM. The caveat with Notebook LM is that it only functions off the knowledge you give it. So you can't rely on it to understand things that are not in its knowledge sources. So if you're trying to follow a certain design, like course design philosophy, you have to include resources about that course design philosophy into your notebook as well as your content. Otherwise, Notebook LM is not going to know what you're talking about. I've got some things on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember their names right now. But that's how it could work. So if you're trying to work with it to help you develop something based on the content you already have, you also need to give it the content and instructions that it's going to need to do that sort of assistance work. If you're using a chatbot, you don't have to give it that additional knowledge right off the bat. You can even build something like a gem that refers to your course content. And then you can ask it things like, I want to have this level of understanding. I want them to be able to do I want to do this kind of teaching for this particular session, and without having information and resources about that. So like a flipped classroom, for example. If you want to use Notebook LM, you're going to have information about what a flipped classroom is, how to build a flipped classroom, and all those kinds of pieces of literature embedded in the notebook itself. Whereas with a chatbot, you don't have to have that embedded in the chatbot. You could just ask it. So it's got a web context and it can go out and find it. So Notebook LM, the way that I've used it in my class is if I've got a particularly complicated project like my final, I'll create a notebook that's got all the sources in that notebook, and then I'll share that notebook with my students. They can have a conversation with it, and I know that the conversations they have with that notebook are not going to be hallucinating things that found on the internet or finding things from a previous section that somebody posted online or anything like that. It's going to be limited to the responses that notebook itself can generate. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. That's points me in the right direction.
You're welcome. The last thing I wanted to talk about for you all today are the AI tools we have available for developers at IU. These are not, with the exception of Realms, these are not, the Microsoft Foundry is not a free tool. You do have to sign up for the Azure service. You'll get API keys. The Microsoft Foundry is where they have all their models. You get to pick a model, any model that Microsoft has access to. All of the billing for this is billed monthly based on the tokens you use. So the heavier of a user you are, the more expensive this service is going to be. If you want to develop an application or a tool that uses an API access to an AI model, I would highly recommend checking out the Microsoft AI Foundry. It's got all of OpenAI's models in it. I think they've even added Claude models to it. But again, this is billed by token. Services that are billed by token are generally a lot more expensive. So just keep that in mind if you're going to go down this route. Again, this is intended for developers. The Chat AIU service that you saw mentioned on the second slide is a service that's built on top of the Microsoft AI Foundry. That's how it works. The other tool that we have available to us as developers is the Realms service, the research and academic LLM service that Scott's team runs. This has 4 models available. The nice thing about Realms, this is fully contained on IU's premises. We control the servers, we control the models, we control what happens to the data. Okay, so we could use DeepSeek, the 2 Llama models, and the open source ChatGPT model. That's the GPT OSS 120 billion parameter model. Those are all running on Realms. They're available to use there. Realms can let you create knowledge collections, which are collections that can be shared across users. It's running on Open Web UI, which is it's kind of like an older version of the ChatGPT interface. You can have shared conversations. You can share conversations out. You can even have conversations with multiple models, like a single conversation with multiple models using Realms to see how the 2 models will respond. However you want to use the Realms service. I think Scott posted, yeah, there it is. Scott posted information. There is a Realms API that is going to be announced next week when he talks to your group. But if you'd like to work on it now, you can email his group and they will get you set up with that now. It will give you API access to these models as well. So I saw lots of questions. Is there anything where should I start? You point me to details on the training on GEMS. Yeah, okay. So give me just a second to get out of full screen mode here. Oh my gosh, come on. So let me get to that page.
So Tom, while you're doing that, I can answer
Sure.
this question from David Taylor. You have a lot of different options for VS Code integrations. if you get an API key for Realms, you can use Code Llama. We're also working on deploying a number of other code models that will be up and coming in the next few months. You then need an extension. A couple of popular ones are Cline and Continue.dev that you can plug in and then point at the API endpoint for Realms. The other option is, as you said, Copilot. Copilot has free tiers for educators and researchers. I can find that link. You have to go through some verification process, but then you will get sort of a monthly allotment of credits from GitHub Copilot that you can use all of the models that they have access to.
I believe there's a way that you can use through a Google Cloud project, which again is something that is billed to a departmental account at IU. Through a Google Cloud project, you can even set up API access to use Gemini command line through IU's interface as well. I'm not super clear on what that process is, and I don't think it's documented in the knowledge base explicitly. If you get in contact with the support center, they'll direct you to the right people to address that question for you. I'm not even sure the right folks in TLT to ask about that right now.
Okay,
those are
great,
kind of
guys.
Those are the kind of developer-centric tools. I told you the last slide would have the slideshow link on it as well. There it is.
Yeah, eventually we'll need a developer-focused session for this, but that's not today. We're almost at time. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Scott. This was great. I think you could tell by the engagement that people were really interested, and so we thank you again for your time. We're gonna take one last question from Batwadeg, and then that'll close out the session.
All right, thank you. I had actually had in a chat. I don't know whether you got a chance to see that. So I'm a basic researcher. We get a lot of omics data, like transcriptomic data or like sequencing data or proteome. Is there any AI tool that is freely available for us researchers to use through IU? I have in the past used, I'll give example, I have tried to use the SAS VIA. It was very helpful, but it is paid and I cannot just afford to get that.
Scott, is that something Realms could help with?
So I think, for omics data, you're not going to really have, you're not going to use the LLMs directly in that you're going to stream large data sets through an LLM. However, I think you could use it pretty easily for code generation. So something like as was mentioned earlier, the Google AI Studio, which is a paid thing, or if you want to do it for free, you can use an integration with VS Code using the Realms API to have sort of AI-powered development of either R or Python code to assist in your analysis.
All right. So I'm going to say, how can I continue this conversation? Because I think there are many researchers like me, those who would be really interested in using AI, but like that is one of the platform which I thought was very useful to me. So you're talking to you about that?
Yeah, you can write into my team. I'll put the email address in here in the chat. If you just sort of describe what you're looking for, we can definitely continue the conversation.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
And
thanks everybody.
I did post one last thing in the chat. There is a new AI for Developers community of practice. I'm going to get information about how to join and get it to Scott so he can share it with you all.
Excellent.